Welcome to Tea Time with Talent Acquisition, the podcast aimed at fostering knowledge and sharing stories within the vibrant talent acquisition community. I'm your host, Eden, and for the next hour or so, I'm going to be joined by a high-skilled talent acquisition professional who also happened to be my former colleague and my very first training in recruitment. With nearly 2 decades in the recruitment field, he's excelled in both the individual contributor and leadership role, and his passion for recruitment is truly exceptional, characterized by a data-driven approach that creates extraordinary experiences for both the companies and the candidates while aligning the team's strategic vision. Having known him for over 10 years, I'm eager to delve into his recent career journey and will explore how he brings organizations to the inherent chaos of being one of the first members of a recruitment team. So when you're ready, grab your favorite tea or coffee if you prefer, and join me in welcoming today's guest, talent acquisition specialist, Dave Gittings. So thanks so much for joining.
Thank you very much for having me on here, Eden. I've been a fan of the podcast for a while. It's been great to see since the Darwin days your blossoming career in talent acquisition, Peritus Partners. I've been watching fondly because obviously there's a few of you that I know. So it's been great to have a chance to catch up with you and like you say, share the story. And thank you for the intro. I think the only issue I have there is nearly 2 decades. It's making me feel very old.
When I wrote 2 decades, I was thinking I've been doing it for a decade. So you were there a year, well, my career times 2. And I was thinking, damn, it's been a long time. But there's so much to uncover out of that. And I think you've kind of played in multiple roles, multiple avenues. And I think that's going to be quite the interesting concept of kind of uncovering what we'll go through today. Before we get into the meat of it, if you're listening or you've been an avid listener, you'll realize that we have the same question for everyone per season at the start. So this season, it's about AI. So more specifically, where do you feel AI has a place in the talent acquisition field?
I don't think AI is going to replace us anytime soon. I think AI is a superpower for anyone in talent acquisition. I think it's going to, and I'm seeing it already, it serves us to be more efficient. It serves us to be more powerful and in search. I've seen a few iterations of it. Where I think sometimes it's trying too hard to take things away from what should be a manual task. But I do love some of it in terms of how it can. I wish I had it when I was in the agency world, and it would kind of, be a superpower. Like I say, that's how I see it. It's great. I think it'll enhance teams. It'll enhance individuals. I don't think it will replace the recruiter. I just don't think it does. I think you've got a fantastic set of tools around you, and AI is just going to complement that. That's how I see it. I'm ever hopeful that it won't replace us. I just think there's too much human element needed in what we do. Too much strategic outlook as well, especially when you go internal, even on the agency side as well. So that would be my opinion. It's a superpower that people should be looking to yield as much as possible. But don't worry about it replacing us just yet.
I think we touch upon this a little bit later in this conversation anyways, because we talk about technology and how to kind of help support that. So I'm sure we'll come back to that. But the focus of kind of being the first one in to a team versus joining an established talent team, there's a lot of differences that obviously someone's going to have to bring forward to him, but mostly from kind of that mindset perspective. So I guess what are kind of those stark differences that you've seen from your own experience about kind of being first one in?
Yeah. It's an interesting position to be in. You are the first person dealing with talent acquisition. So you are trying to capture as much as possible in a very short space of time. You look around and there isn't much process around you, set ways of doing things. So you are a builder, you're an architect, you're a voice of the business, you are candidate experience, you are all and in between. I think the mindset is builder and grower. Okay? Looking at it kind of strategically, thinking about how it can be built effectively, kind of thinking about how you can replicate the success of it, and not just being too parochial and too focused on it being just the bums on seats kind of role. That is what the hiring managers and stakeholders will want. Hey, we need these people in. But I think you have a great opportunity as the first person to look at how the talent acquisition function of that business. I look at it as a function, not just a process, but how it can perform later on down the line and really serve the business as it goes on.
So how might, I guess and we'll talk about the challenges because you've reeled off quite a few different components that make up that role. And individually in larger organizations, they are one person. One person does process, one person does employee branding. You have a few people that have been sourcing. You've got so many of these challenges to do by yourself. How might you start approaching these challenges when there is so much to look at?
Yeah, there is a hell of a lot to look at. You can't. I think early on you're going to be your key focus is finding new talent for the business. So that's your first kind of like you're the tip of the spear when it comes to the engineering team needing new engineering hires, the GTM team needing more people in sales. I think where you want to start dabbling in, and you're right, these functions are massive in other organizations, purely focused on those particular roles. I think you want to kind of step back and look at how can you add to each of those small, drop and drip feed the kind of parts into that to make it look and work for you going forward. I think candidates' experience is massive. Absolutely huge for an organization to grab on early and adopt that kind of approach to that branding as well. And you can start small with these things. I think candidate experience is literally flipping it around. If I was an applicant to this business, how would I want to be treated? How would I want to be communicated to? And how would I want that experience to come out at the end? If I'm looking at branding and I'm thinking it from a business point of view, how do I look at the file? Someone's never heard of us before. When they do their research, Glassdoor, website, career site, what do they see first? How does that speak to them? And what does it say? And I think you can work with the team. And a theme for me, and I'll probably say it a few times as we talk, but talent acquisition is a team sport. And I think that's the mindset you need to have early and fast. You shouldn't sit there as the only person doing it. You need to be a great stakeholder manager. You need to really invest in relationship building around the business, looking at who can help you. And talent acquisition should be seen as a team sport by everyone. So your greatest success, or one of the greatest success you'll have, is how good you are at keeping great communication between your stakeholders and bringing them on board. Not only the decision makers, but everyone part of the process. How can they contribute to the candidate experience, to the brand? And believe me, they can contribute really positively, or they can contribute quite negatively if they, even if they don't mean to.
We'll touch upon candidate experience and brand in a moment because they are, again, big topics. But I want to break them down because if it's kind of like that core fundamental component for you, then I want to spend some time there. But I've got a kind of thought process as you're saying there. Yes, you need to go make hires, and I think there's sometimes this misconception of let's just go do project work for project work's sake. And I actually had a really good conversation. A guy called Jeffrey, who was the first episode on this season, where he talks about has recruitment lost its way. Obviously, being the first one in, you've got to find that balance between project work, what's going to be needed today, plan experience, for example, versus the actual hiring. So you might have stakeholders, especially the C-suite, who've brought you on board to come make those hires. How can you strike the balance of saying to them, look, no, it's not just about hiring today, but it's about doing all these other components when they're looking at, we need to make these deliverables, we need to make these sales pipelines as well. And how can we, I guess I'm trying to work out, how can we best coach them to show them that our job isn't just about delivering people to a job, it's so much more than that.
Yeah, the strategic element. I mean,
Yeah.
from your founders, you're going to need buy-in really quickly. You're going to need to be able to understand the picture. And you're right, there's going to be, the highest demand, let's not take it away. My job when I joined Locac was to find people. And that was why I was brought in, to find people. And that's what I started with, on the ground. And it was funny, when you work in a startup, there's a bit of an expression, something from the investors. The CEO came back from the meeting and said, hey, starting a startup is like jumping off a cliff and building the plane on the way down. It was an interesting analogy, but an analogy that I think is fair, and you should kind of understand that. That's what it feels like. You're building everything on the fly. So you'll get fully into hiring, and then you'll have to kind of set the scene and say, look, if these are the things that we could do well right now, we can get these people in. How do we make sure they stay? So retention, and I'll talk about my views on retention being the new talent acquisition, I think, a little bit later maybe. But building out and understanding what we can do well and what will help us going forward. And it is a balance. It's not an easy one. It depends on the demand. If you've just got seed funding or Series A funding, it's likely that you're going to be off flying. You're going to have lots of of processes. And I think, using technology in there as well to kind of try to automate and build out and superpower yourself with a lot of the technology. But balancing it is really hard. I think it's setting objectives, simple objectives, year one, right? Let's say candidate experience, you want to work on your brand. Hey, for the first 6 months, I want us to have a really positive review of Glassdoor, because Glassdoor is incredibly powerful either way. Negatively powerful, like it can give a great negative impression or a positive impression. So I would set small markers if I was giving someone advice and say, right, your candidate experience, what you want to do is have people that are saying positive things about you and not negative. That's it. Their experience. You want to almost invite an applicant to go on Glassdoor, even though they haven't got a job, which they can do, and talk about you and say, didn't get an offer, but it was a positive experience. And we had some examples of that at Locat, which is amazing. So I think you're trying to set small markers. That's how I would do it.
Mm-hmm.
If you go and Google, how do I build a brand, like employer brand, the data, the information, the ideas is huge. There'll be organizations out there that have whole teams on that and they're very marketing focused. But I think you can say, right, I want people to say positive things about us. Founders, are you happy with that? Yeah, I'm happy with that. Right. So we need to make sure that we have great experience. Everyone's on board. I'm going to manage it in this way. I'm going to set SLAs for everyone to follow so no one has a negative experience. They're not ghosted. They're not taking too long. We'll give them great feedback. Okay, brilliant. And I think that's how I would break it down and balance it. Because I think if you try to grab it all in at once and think about, you do have to have and I think we spoke about it, didn't we? Like a North Star, like an end destination. It's never end because it's always going. But how do I start with saying, okay, I want positive. When someone goes and researches, interviewing at Locat or wherever it might be, oh, okay. Yeah, this company looks good. They look like they know what they're doing. And I think that's how you balance it, because you are going to spend probably 80, 90% of the time sometimes sourcing and managing process. But if you can think about, right, let's put these things into that process that I'm doing. And then it's an everyday task. So the candidate experience builds into the brand. Someone saying something positive. I know that we contact them every Friday. Everyone in an active process, we contact them every Friday. Hey, I've got no feedback. I'm really sorry. But even that is well received by people. Hey, no problem at all. Hey, here's the feedback. I'm going to get it next week. Just give them really honest and open and transparent feedback. Hey, we've added another part to this process. We really, really interested. Those things are tricky. But I think just communicating with people and you kind of weave it into what you're doing, build it into what you're doing on a daily basis, and think about the kind of macro things you can do on a daily basis that will build into a bigger picture later on. Be kind of how you manage it, right? And spin a lot of plates at once.
Yeah, I like that a lot, because I think I used the phrase when we first kind of spoke about this is like daunting. When you look at candidate experience, it is a daunting prospect. And we've done 4 episodes on one part of candidate experience with this podcast before, and coming into a brand new environment where they might have some process here, some way of doing it there, but you've got different hire managers and kind of piecing it together. I like the fact you're kind of setting yourself almost these smaller milestones and advocating back to the hires that be, this is what we're working towards. I've got kind of a question around those Glassdoor reviews, because I have seen it both sides, positive reviews and negative. The negative are really disastrous. Let's say, for example, I ran the interview process with you and I was unsuccessful. How are you taking somebody who might be quite hurt, let's shall we say, about not getting a job, and how are you then spinning it in a way where they're then going actively onto Glassdoor and writing a positive review? Like obviously feedback's going to come into that, fine. The candidate experience also might come into that, but how are you getting that request across to them, and how are you making it feel like it's, because they're doing you a favor there? Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think if I'm correct, kind of how do you encourage someone to go on Glassdoor and write a good review? It would be
pretty much, especially when especially when they're unsuccessful.
Yes, yeah. I think of it like this. Most applicants, most people, and I'm an applicant, been an applicant, you've been an applicant in time, and how do they want to be treated? If you don't get the job, but you understand why, the reasons behind it, and you went through a process that didn't put any additional barriers, it was smooth, it was communicative, it was informative, it was honest. you can't really, I don't think many people would go on and say, I'm super angry I didn't get a job at local. Okay. Or if they go through an experience with you that says, I interviewed a week ago, 3 weeks ago, I've heard nothing. And then I got an auto response saying, hey, we've moved on or we've closed the role. That's where people get angry. I think it's quite easy to encourage people to want to say positive things about you when you give them a positive experience. And I think it's built really simply into that. So we didn't go out and say to everyone, hey, look, please write us a review, please write us a review. But people went on there and did write reviews, both positive.
So it's organic that they were doing.
Yeah. It's
right.
Most people, unfortunately, want to share their bad experience, right? But what Glassdoor does as well, there's a bit of an algorithm in the background that kind of say if you're working on them, researching, it will ask you to contribute. So it kind of promotes that from itself. And it might say, what have you done? And it might promote it that way. And I was surprised to see a couple on there, if I'm really honest with you. I was super happy because one review was that they didn't get an offer, but they had a positive experience. And honestly, I think, pushing them on, that's maybe the wrong way to look at it, but inviting people to write a review is okay. But I think if you give them a great organic experience and you set really simple parameters, we're human beings. We want people to be honest with us. And if you are rejected, phone them up, send them a voice note. There's so many different ways now of just saying, hey, this is where we're at. This is why you wasn't selected. We'd love to see your profile in the future. It might work out again in the future, and just give people that. Most people don't walk away angry from that. They walk away angry from a bad experience. If I go to a restaurant and I wait an hour for my food and it comes out cold, someone's going to hear about it. If I go there and it's slightly late, I wait an hour, but I'm informed the whole way through. The food's amazing at the end, and I'm given a discount. My fire's been put out, so I'm less angry. So I think it was quite organic when we got those reviews, and I think Glassdoor does its work there as well. But I do think companies out there should manage that Glassdoor process. And it is a process. You do need someone on the hot seat of it. You will be replying to some things that are upsetting to hear as well. But I think as well, there's two sides to every story. Sometimes the employer can, if you read it, we can be seen as the company can be seen as doing something wrong, but there's two sides to every story. And I think it's good that Glassdoor gives you that opportunity to do that. But it's great if they already write something else.
Yeah, I call it the TripAdvisor effect, where you genuinely go on TripAdvisor if you're pissed off with someone and you want to write something bad. Like, exactly. I've never written a positive review, not because I haven't had a positive side. I just don't have time or energy to do it.
But you tell your friends.
Exactly. I like the fact that it's organic. So that's what I was kind of worried about. I won't lie. When you was talking about it then, I was sitting there thinking, surely you're not messaging people and saying, hey, you didn't get the job, but come do this. So it's built into how you're working and doing it. And then over time that becomes, it's segueing into branding, right? So with the branding side of things, you've mentioned it's like also kind of experience branding cornerstone and kind of what we're doing. Why is branding so important at an early stage? And if you can try to explain to us what employer branding means at an early stage versus at a bigger company, because again, I think there's always kind of these differences of, employer branding for us is 1,000 of these activities, right? So, tell me a little bit about from your experience.
Yeah, so I grabbed this concept quite early on because I really wanted to think about how we did it. And I think branding, as what we know, is an identifiable brand or kind of label that we understand instantly, and it might kind of reflect something, right? So could be anything, couldn't it? Nike, Under Armour, sports, as you know. So high quality sports, very good active wear and so on. So
other sport brands are available.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully your reach is that good that that's.
I hope that Nike is listening to this and want to sponsor or Under Armour. I do not mind. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, please.
I want dibs on a bit of a share on that.
I'll give you some freebies. Don't worry.
But it's the branding aspect is quite interesting because it's a little bit different, right? So what you're trying to do is look at the touch points, as I always understood it, the touch points of your business and how do people kind of interpret that as a kind of company that they would want to work at. The first touch point being a really important one is your careers website. What story does that tell? What narrative does that give? Because we're not trying to we're trying to understand how do people see us? What's their interpretation of working at Locat? When we had our brand, what is it about our values? What is it about our benefits? What is it about team structure? What are we trying to solve? What's our mission as a business? And it is a mixture of all of those things. I think sometimes companies don't look at it as an opportunity to sell the benefits of working for you, because that is absolutely critical. And I've done a couple of different things in studying that, and a great course in copywriting, and that's key. Selling who you are, but sharing who you are as what kind of mission they're joining, what kind of business values, and so on. But more importantly, what they get working for. I think people underestimate the power of giving the benefits of that. So there's one touch point. I think your advertising on LinkedIn, Indeed, wherever it might be, on what platform, that creates a great message to people and gives people another overview, maybe a condensed window of your career site about who you are as a business and what benefits they work for you would have for you. And another thing that feeds into brand is your candidate experience, is the places that people will go after. So if they're making a decision to apply to you, they're going to look at your careers website, they're going to go on Glassdoor, they're going to look at reviews, they're going to look at posts people might have made about you or whatever it might be. Once they're in, the brand they experience then is the candidate experience, the communication. Is the application process simple or is it long-winded? Are you asking people to create another profile and cover letter and grovel and do all these different things? Or is it pretty slick and just say, hey, get your CV into me? One thing we wanted to do is make it easy to apply. If you didn't have a CV, send me your LinkedIn profile. That's absolutely fine. We can initiate a conversation off the back of that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of these stages, that first level of what do they perceive you to be like, and what message are you putting out through basic branding, content, through wording. And then where can I gather more information? What I get that from experience, and that is your brand. That's how you treat people as an applicant. Is it just a number? We don't care, or hey, we appreciate every applicant we get. We give everyone. We might not be able to phone everyone and say, hey, your CV didn't quite match, but you'll get an email from us and say, hey, look, thank you for applying. We appreciate it. We encourage it. But then if you go further in the process and you interview someone, you get more detailed feedback. You get honest feedback, and maybe you offer a bit of a gift in that as well, in terms of real solid feedback or CV feedback, and say, hey, look, maybe you could do this. That would really help you. I think there's a lot of things we could do for free that would really be powerful for people. This came up recently. I don't know if you want to put a pin in it, but it was a friend of mine who I went to university with. I'll tag him in this when it comes out. His daughter, who was only young, I think 4 or 5, maybe a bit older, maybe a bit older than that, but said he'd gone through a job process, didn't get it. She's like, "What? If you don't get the job, you don't even get like a bottle of wine or a thank you." So I found this really funny, and I found it quite interesting. We kind of spitballed back and forth with it. I thought, how amazing would that be if a company, as part of their brand, said, hey, you were down to the last 3, we've gone another route. We're really sorry, but during our interview process, we know how much you love Amazon, or you loved one of the sports brands out there, and you sent them a voucher, or you sent them a book token, or you sent them something as a kind of thanks for being a part of it. Sorry it didn't work out. What kind of brand impression would that give? It would be amazing.
Yeah.
And I think I really even say, hey, look, we could do a 20-minute clinic on your CV. We want you to be successful in the future. We'd love to help with that. How about some interview advice with our head of talent, or whatever it might be? There's so many different things you can do that would really push it on and go from there. So branding is massive. It has a lot of components to it. When you're the first person in and you don't have all the resources to it, it's more about the authentic responses and kind of experiences that people have with your brand. I think that really builds the credentials. I'm just candidate experience has become a bit of an obsession with me more recently. You can have the most fantastic looking video content driven career site, but there's nothing better than someone going through an interview process with you, not getting the job, but still going on Glassdoor and saying, hey, positive, didn't get an offer, but would I apply again? 100%. I wish you all the success. So that is probably the most.
It's that end part. It's moving them away from transactional, and this comes into the retention part and referrals, which we'll come to in a moment as well. But I wholeheartedly agree. The amount of people that were unsuccessful. I've got people I've known for 8-9 years, never been able to get them a job because I've always at the end they took something else, which is absolutely fine, but we're still in contact now. and
Yeah.
people come back to you, and people come back to companies that treat them well.
Mm.
Again, I know I keep advocating for other episodes, but one will come out after we record this. A lady called Megan. I cannot stress her approach has changed dramatically how I work with some companies now. So
Yeah.
part of what she does as part of what she's implemented at her team was when you reject someone, say work inside sustainability, when you reject someone, you send them your template email, right, which does have boiler text in it, right? You can't
Yeah. Yeah.
remove that.
No.
There's a section where you add your own faults, which you can basically just take from the hire manager. And then there's also a section, because clearly people who are applying to sustainability will probably want a job in that field. So they share,
Yeah.
I think it's like 10 job boards that are specifically about green tech,
Yeah.
sustainability,
Brilliant.
EV, that sort of stuff. And they're basically like, you obviously were interested in us, check out these job boards. And it's like giving them that, I mean, and it's absolutely templated. She confirmed
Yeah.
it with me, so it's not unique per person. And sorry if
But
someone
it's
now
still
receives it
useful.
and thought it was unique, but it is still that free added value. Okay, this wasn't right, and
Yeah.
that this little touch points, I think, like that, they go such a long way.
Yeah.
Um,
They
why
do.
why why do you think companies don't focus on employer branding so early? What do you think is limiting
I,
them?
I don't think. Do you know what happens? I don't think people realise the power of it. It becomes reactive, not proactive. And I
Right.
think if I, having seen what it can do on both sides, I don't think they realise the power of it. Honestly, I just don't think people think, right, how do we, like the first hiring, you're given job specs and say how hire this. But if you could have a conversation about looking down the line and saying, look, what would it mean to us? Imagine we had a hire, a really critical hire. We had engineers flooding to us for our software team, scale, because they heard such positive things from our employees and so on. I think often when they deal with it, it's because an issue's come up. Because the person who's dealing with their Glassdoor has sent the screenshot, what's happened, to the founders and gone,
Explain this.
we've dropped the ball here. This is a clanger. This looks awful on us. Like, I can't believe
Yeah.
we've done it. And it can be so innocent. It's not that you've got a team of people doing stuff. I think in a startup, it's so hard because everyone is in build mode. Everyone is going at sometimes 100 miles an hour. Your founders are out dealing with investors, right? They're trying to raise funding to keep the business going, give everyone a job. You've got your engineering team putting out fires, dealing with tech, dealing with new products. Everyone is spinning lots of plates, and they say wearing hats, and it's true. And it can be so easy for it to slip through the cracks. But I think if you thought about it and said, right, it's kind of looking at a problem after, right, and say, hey, well, how do we avoid that? And me going in, I'd say, right, how can we just do some simple things to make sure everyone has a good experience and we don't invite any negative press that we've encouraged ourselves? Getting people on board and that talent acquisition is a team sport. Just making sure your hiring managers say, look, for every person that gets through to a final, I need several bullet points of why they've been rejected. And it can be open and it can be honest, and I'll find a way of giving that to them. But actually, I think people would be quite open to very honest feedback as well. So I think companies just don't. It becomes a fire that they have to put out. Did we get it right all the time? No, but I think we figured it out pretty early and said, right, now we need to be proactive. Now we need to be proactive with our Glassdoor, proactive with our candidate experience. My team were very good with that as well. We had similar templates, but I had a section in it that were personalized. You can't, it's impossible to have everything as a message at all. But I recently, even working with recent candidates, something I love as well. I was known for this in my company, just sending voice notes, because I just thought it was more personal. Even if I'm messaging someone, hey, can you do this? The tone, the inflection, the kind of language that you use. I sent a rejection to someone recently, and I couldn't get hold of them on the phone. But I sent a voice note, hey, look, this is the situation. This is where we're at. Hey, look, thank you for the feedback. Like, that was it. Thank you for the feedback. No angry arms around it up. But yeah, I could go on a long spiel on that, but I think companies don't think about it early.
It boils down to, and it comes back to the transparency component. I feel like candidate experience and branding are really nice components to get right, purely by just being transparent. Tell candidates where they stand.
Yes.
That's it.
Oh,
Obviously, yes, there's so many more nuances that come to it, but if you want to start something early on, then get your process that's tight knit, get a lot of people involved. A lot of people involved. Sorry, I'll
If
rephrase
you
that.
spoke
It's
to
tight to get the right people involved. Go on.
Absolutely. Sorry, I just thinking about then. If you spoke to a marketing expert of a brand, the best thing they could say, I guess, or they would want is people talking about your brand in the most
Yeah.
positive way and word of mouth. That's their goal, right? Not, hey, that's
Yeah.
great, I'm going to buy that. It's all these people talking about it. In the viral world we're in the social media driven world we're in, if you can think as a brand, how do we achieve great experiences that someone, all it takes is one for them to go, I'm going to write something positive about this company because it was really good. Even if they go on their LinkedIn and tag you as a business. And we've had good and we've had bad with that, because no one's perfect, no business is perfect, and you learn along the way. But it is really important if you thought about just that. That costs you nothing. That's just being human, transparent, authentic, thinking about, hey, this person's looking for a job. In this day and age, in this current market, people are looking for jobs because they're desperate and they need jobs. There's a human experience happening, and I think that's the first thing. It's free. You don't even need to build a great website. Yeah, careers website. It can be informative, but it's not the real, honest,
Or
true
Notion,
experience.
something like that. Just put some videos up about the team, put the values.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be bells and whistles.
Yeah.
There's so many pre-seeds and seeds that use Notion.
Oh,
It's
so
becoming
many.
like the go-to.
That's why
Go-to.
Yeah. That's why retention's like, and I said it to you when we were chatting, setting up, and retention is the new recruitment, because if you can have your
on that,
employees talk.
what do you mean before you kind of dive into having it?
Yeah.
When you say retention is new recruitment,
Yeah.
what does that mean in the Dave Gittings head?
So when we went through Series A, we started hiring at a more rapid scale. And the intensity of the needed bums on seats, filling teams, building teams was crazy in this startup in local. Amazing and exciting all at the same time. Now, there was, I would advise anyone, and I'll share some sources on this later, but getting into the data early as well. I mean, something back when we were at Darwin together, we was always quite data driven. We had a lot of tools for it, and it's something that's remained with me. And you mentioned it in the primary part. The data is real. And what I uncovered is when I was doing my exploration is how we went through a period where our attrition was terrible. It was really
Remember the percentage, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah.
All right, the face says it all.
Not quite 50% at times, and it was by different teams. There was a team that it was really challenging with, which was our sales component, and then there was other teams as well, like the length of service. Looking at the length of service, and I just realised the best analogy I have, and you know me as an old trainer, so if you're trying to fill up a pool and you've got a leaky bucket, it's going to take you a lot longer than it would do if your bucket was watertight. And what I felt was we were leaking talent at certain points, and I bet there's a lot of organizations that are. So retention is the new recruitment, because you are going to empower your team, talent acquisition team, not to be backfilling and have 60% of their roles as backfill, but to be having that team as real new talent acquisition, hiring people. Now, people will go, they do tours of duty, 3 years, probably a rough average these days. So that's a cycle then you can start planning for as well. And you can start thinking about workforce planning with looking at tenures. There's so much you can get from data. It's crazy. But for me, retention is the new talent acquisition, because it empowers your team, like I say, to keep looking for the best talent. You can find, because you're going to have a balance of always, especially when the business gets to a certain size, of you're replacing people and finding new people. You want your time to be really spent on finding new people. You want it to be on bringing new talent, vibrant ideas, D&I, working on building a really fantastic workforce, not on just having to replace people because they're unhappy or because they're not being looked after, they're not being trained and developed. And I think there's a few simple things that I would look at, right? How do I make sure that everyone who joins our business is challenged and wants to stay here for 3 years minimum? Right? That might just be a random number, but hey, 3 years, like the cycle would be good. Right? I want them to have a great tour of duty. I want them to, how do we make sure? Well, the simple thing, are we competitive on salary? Do we offer a great EVP? I think that comes back to your EVP, your employer value proposition, first of all. And I would die on the hill and say any company with a great EVP can challenge any other business out there to get great talent acquisition. Your EVP will get them in, how you look after them, develop them, train them, look after them, give them a great experience, will keep them with you for a long period of time. That is an underlooked power that a company should invest in. And it doesn't need to be, again, complicated. Local, we looked at it, we thought about how do we make sure what do people want from a new job, right? There's a few things that we look for. Great management, better opportunities, career progression, learning and development. One of our benefits became a learning and development tool, learning and development budget you could spend on anything. I did a copywriting course done by Mitch Sullivan, so I will shout him out, but it's fantastic. Even at my old 2-decade age, it was still fantastic to think about it from a different perspective and outreach and so on. So, think about how does that career scout work? You come in an associate, how do you make senior associate or whatever that title might be? I think building that back end piece and having that there and thinking, right, we're going to get great people in, but our biggest challenge is going to be keeping them, or the biggest thing we want to do. You empower your team so much. It was peaks and troughs. There's different times where you can see there's sometimes the feel of it is a bit, we're doing a lot of backfills here. We're doing something wrong. And when you can address that and you can think about that, what do people want from a starting point? Great EVP, that gets them in. Do you follow through with that EVP? There's going to be a lot of things that challenge that. And I would imagine people in the comments might say, well, founders might change the work policy and so on. But if you can cement that and you can have that as a real constant, I think that's what I mean by retention is the new recruitment, because it empowers your recruitment, empowers your people to stay, and talent acquisition to really want to stay with the business and build. And if you're working in a startup, you really want to keep them, especially if you've worked hard to get them in. Finding great talent is for any business is challenging, but people who are really in that building mindset that a startup needs, it's quite a unique difference.
I think coming back to your point, if somebody does change, the founders change path, product changes path, whatever the value proposition of an organization changes, these definitely all happen way more frequently than people realize. I think as you say there, it's about taking note it happens, then reverting back, okay, what's our EVP as a team? And then how do we then project that back? Transparency to those if things happen with people in process, and then moving forward, this is the North Star that we're working towards. We do a pre-mortem breakdown, slightly different, obviously, because we're not talking about going into a team, but we pre-mortem break down every single process that we have as a collective team. And I wrote this down on kind of my notes to talk about this in general, because it sounds like that's what you were doing at Locad, but without using that title. I don't know if you did have it, but essentially you think of what's the worst case, what's all outcomes, as many outcomes as we can think of, and then you work backwards and go, okay, we can do this, we can do that, we can change this. Some things are completely, the unknown unknowns. You're not going to know them yet. Some things you can predict, and that's how you start. The way I look at it, in the first one in, you cannot do everything. Even when we're talking about building that retention process, you cannot do it. Not in its entirety, not to the level that you would want to and what you had at the end of Locad. So it's about working out, this is the ideal. What can we do now? What can we do later? What can I do by myself? What do I need help with? And really having that, that's the strategic side. And I think anyone who's going in as the first one in, there is that, it's more strategic than executor, I believe. But there needs to be that balance.
Yeah, it's a tricky balance, but you're exactly right. Like a pre-mortem, you're better off looking at. The SAS do something like Special Air Service. If they do something, they plan it to the nth degree, right? Measure twice, cut once. All these different analogies, and they're there for a really simple reason. I remember I used to use in training back when I was at Darwin. I had Abraham Lincoln. If I had 4 hours, cut down the trigger in 3 hours. Sharpening the axe.
Sharpening the knife. Sharpening the axe. Sharpening the knife. You'll be there a while. Cutting down the knife.
So it's a good analogy to look at things and say, right, what will go wrong? Like, we do things wrong now. How can we, what's our worst case scenario? Everyone decides to leave that management. All right, so let's think about that. How do we make sure we're managing people well? What do people really want from a job? Just that first question. What do people want? Do they want to feel like they're working purely for the founders, or they want to be part of the team? I don't believe in families. I think about being part of a family and business.
No, I think we've moved on from that.
Yeah, yeah,
5 years ago,
massively.
yes, but I think the market's realised when everyone is
Yeah,
on the chopping block, as it
yeah,
were.
yeah.
It's
You can't, yeah, sling your family out. But what do people want? What kind of experience do they want? They want to feel heard. They want to develop. They want to learn. I've always said it from my very early days in talent acquisition. We were taught the bank managers close, and it's kind of stuck with me as a process, right? So, and I still say it to people now. I believe someone will be, they'll have a better opportunity even if they do a 3-year tour of duty or 4-year tour of duty. I believe if someone comes in and builds with us, then when they go out, whenever that is, hopefully it's longer rather than shorter, they will be more powerful in the market. They'll have more opportunity on the market, both learning, both salary, both position and experience. And I think that's the critical part. Thinking about that as a business, how can we make sure everyone comes in and when they leave, they're better? Obviously, there's
yeah,
unique situations. It doesn't work out for everyone. I don't believe in fairy tale like Gareth. I don't believe in fairy tales either. And things do go wrong. It's not the same for everyone. But I think if you had that as your North Star, simplicity part, how can we make sure it should be better? How can we make sure you give really honest feedback? We set, first of all, a performance evaluation process. Does it need to be complicated? There's a lot of software you can use this as well. And that's where I love tech, because tech has made a lot of this super easy. We used to do it on Excel sheets, didn't we, back in the day? And we like a lot
back in the day,
laborious.
much to the frustration of some people, but yeah,
Yeah, but you can have these things mapped out and the automation set up, and the manager's told 2 weeks before, hey, you got someone coming up for it, and it gets that conversation started. So that's the simplicity part. We spoke about it a couple of times. It is a lot of going on, but if the company just says, right, that's our first goal, is to make sure that everyone has a great experience, that we do what we say we're going to do, but we do kind of fair. And I think one of the things that was quite critical hiring for a startup, which if anyone's listening to this and you're doing it, you kind of have to be very honest. You don't have to say to someone, there's a chance this is all going to fail, which could happen. As a startup, it could. There's a chance that, look, I think one of the things you need to be able to be successful in this business is embrace ambiguity, embrace a bit of chaos. Because at times, that's how it's going to feel. But everyone in the business will be focused on stabilizing and moving forward. And we had a value which was share bad news first, which I really, really liked. And I would tell people
yeah,
a lot, share bad news first. It doesn't matter. There's no judgment. If something's gone wrong, small or big, put it on the table. And then the right people get around that table. Talk about it, think about it, and proactively move forward with it. And when you're in that kind of environment, not only are people happy to share with it, they don't feel threatened by it, they feel comfortable to share when things have gone wrong. And if they're fixable, we move on. If they're not, we cut the losses pretty quickly, and not with the person necessarily, but the process and how we're fixing it. So, yeah, sharing bad news first. And that's where you've got to live a few of those values that are quite critical when you set up a business, or at least start thinking about really building out your talent acquisition.
I think values more so in startups than any other type of
Yeah,
business, in my opinion. Just from personal experience, you don't need to cut you open and bleed the colours. You don't need to be a PR representative
yeah,
of the company, but you need to align. If you don't,
yeah,
on the values at least, it's just such a mismatch. In a large corporate enterprise, each company has their own set of values anyway. Each team, sorry, has its own like sub set of values, and you can
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
go in and adjust. But the startup, like, you cannot hide in a 20-person startup, a 30-person startup.
No,
It's out there in the
no.
open, and you also cannot change it. It's quite interesting. I've started in my I've thought about this for a while, but I've started now in my pitches with candidates when we support them during the interview process. When it comes to like culture interviews, I've always tried to work out, okay, how can you best present yourself? And my pitches now have completely adjusted to say, like let's say it's for you, David. Like, Dave, you are you. Like, you cannot change you, right? You
Mm,
can change certain nuances in how you answer, but fundamentally, your values are yours, your opinions are yours. It's going to work or it's not going to work. And since I've done that, like, the reception we've had on the other side is like this sigh of relief, like, oh wow, okay,
yeah, yeah,
I can go and
yeah,
be myself. And some are like, well, obviously I'm going to do that, and others it's like, wow, okay, like that's the type of kind of conversations they're going to be. I think that's kind
yeah,
of that comes back to the candidate experience of it's going to work or it won't work. I know it sounds
yeah,
stupid saying that, but the moment you
yeah,
take out the sting of and the pressure of an interview and you just have a
yeah,
conversation,
yeah.
life just becomes so much easier with hiring. Um,
Absolutely.
we touched
Yeah,
we touched upon technology, so I just want to spend some time here before we wrap up because You mentioned a few things. You mentioned kind of it helps automate certain components. You know, it allows you to be a bit more efficient, especially things like AI. So when you was creating, let's call it the text that you chose or helped to choose, what were you kind of focusing on? And were there any particular tools that you would recommend based on the experiences you had with them?
Yeah. If you can, and if your company has the investment part of it ready to go, a great ATS, I think is absolutely critical for your talent acquisition team to work at pace and to be able to follow through with all of the aspects of your candidate experience. A great ATS will have mass emailing, individual emailing, process reminders, booking opportunities for interviews. We use Personio. There is other available. We use Personio. It was an ATS and a HRIS, so it transitioned your employees through, which I love. They didn't have it at the beginning, so when I first started, I was listing out all the applicants on a piece of paper, giving out time slots and using blanked out diary slots from my founders and everyone. It's nuts. And then they brought out, which is another great piece of tech. If you haven't got it, there is a load of options out there now, but an interview booking add-on or an interview booking tool, which you just want to book in. Like, I don't book meetings in by saying, hey, are you free at this time or these times? I send them a link and they can book things in. We did it for all parts of that. Google now give a free tooling of that.
Microsoft Teams have theirs embedded in as well now.
Yeah, embedded in. I think everyone has realised that it's the easiest way to book a meeting is to give someone a link. It links to your diary. It doesn't give them any extra time. You can personalise it. You can put windows of time. That was really critical. The ATS from the communication part of it as well. And then there's some new tools that I've kind of really recently been more introduced to. But, you know, one of the most powerful I'm using, and I'm happy to share it, is Sourcewell. Sourcewell is a really interesting tool because, let's face it, I know that when I reach out to a group of people, either back in the day on a business development sense or even now on an applicant sense, they won't always reply to my first email. I'm guilty of that. I can read it, be distracted, do something, and I've left it. But having something that automates follow-up, I think is really critical. And that could be, there's probably a lot of other tools that do that as well. It's just one that I'm using, and I love the intuitive nature of it. It's very organized. You can set campaigns and it can use really well. I know
Does Sourcewell work for, sorry, jump in. Does Sourcewell work for searching for candidates though? Because I thought Sourcewell was for mostly business developments. We use Apollo, which is a similar tool.
Yeah. Well, no, you can. It's got both. So it's used for both, and I've used it for both. And what it does is it builds a sequence up, which I think is brilliant. And actually, if I think across my long career, or longish, there is a load of candidates that I never I spoke to because I didn't follow up. Because I fired them once with a message and they never followed up. And I know that when I started doing it, you say, oh, that worked. So what it does is it builds campaigns, and you can set different steps in. If you've got their email, you can build an email. You've got email, connection request, copy and paste. And it's brilliant. It allows you to copy things across very quickly. It works with your LinkedIn. It works with your LinkedIn recruiter. And builds out a sequence of events, right? So all these people, I'm going to message them first on email. Then I'm going to remind myself in 3 days I want to send it again. I'll go through it again. Then I'm going to grab their email, which is quite easy to find people's emails. A number of different ways. Right, here's an email. Here's a follow-up to that email. A follow-up to that email. Okay, now I'm going to set a phone call reminder. Right, now it's time to call. And so it sets up a great sequence of events. And I think there's nothing better that, especially as an individual or a solo or even a small team, or any just recruiter, especially agency or internal, to have a lot of things and follow-up automated that can flow in. There's still the need for the kind of basics. And I've never really been bought into, there's some great tools out there that will find, do find all the perfect profiles it says for you, but I've never struggled with that. And I think Boolean searching is just a skill that everyone should know. And you can use recruiting.net, which we used even back in the year. I used to talk about
LinkedIn recruiter search capability, though, as of today, I think they're actually worse than what they were a year ago. They've added some new phrases, they've added some new features into it, and I actually think they've pigeonholed people too much. I call myself a professional people connector, which is an absolute make-believe title. So when you search for a tech recruiter, I don't come up. So but there are people who are like that. What's the best one? There's some guy who calls himself a cake baker, because he works for a company that sells related items who does their software. But yeah, I think LinkedIn, if you're going to go through that route, it needs to be Boolean keywords, not pre-filters.
Yeah, I think you need to be great at building searches, and I think you just need to be patient enough to filter it down to an amount. But I actually believe that, getting more into like the process of great outreach and stuff like that. If you've got a compelling story, you want to send it to the right people. You never want to do it en masse. You're better off doing a targeted search of reaching out to 20 people than you are a massive 50. It's going to be part of your brand. It links into your brand. This company just spams us. I'm a scrum master, and they were trying to send me an IT engineer role, or whatever it might be, and that's something that everyone thinks about. But that's part of your brand as well, your outreach. How you're doing it. Hey, we've got a Python developer role. Oh, okay, I'm a Python developer, and see why you're reaching out to me. This makes sense. And but back to the tech stack, it allows you to automate a lot of that. But I think any great recruiter knows how to search first, select the right profiles, and then build up. And then it's the follow-up. It's the, put it into this process. Right, great. That's going to look after me, and it's going to constantly remind me, move on to the next steps, or automatically reach out. But it has a lot of personalization. So I would say if you're looking at interested in something like that, go and get a demo, because it gives you the chance to really personalize. And personalization is key, right? I mean, most of the applicants out there have seen every type of message. They've seen everything before, but personalizing is relatively straightforward, and it links into that as well. So those are my great tools. And I would also say, just maybe on a finisher, I think one of the most compelling things that I've learned or got involved with or got a lot of information from was the people in the industry. One thing I'll say about talent acquisition, it's going through a torrid time at the moment, so you can see why people are doing this, is it's come together Wreckfest. I couldn't make it, sadly, but you can see the vibe that it gives off. You can see the kind of feeling it has and what people get from it. And there's a couple of great people that are part of that community, and there is too many to mention. There's a couple of people that I really like. The talent community as a whole, the talent TTC, is brilliant. Find it on LinkedIn.
We'll tag them into this.
On Slack. Yeah, it's incredible. There's so many different channels. People are willing to share. I was interviewing at a business once, and I'm open to opportunities. So I was interviewing at a business, and I sent someone a presentation I had to do. I've never sat down with this person in my life. Looked through it, gave me feedback. Hung Lee is brilliant. He's a bit of a legend in the talent acquisition world. You can see he delivers so much great content. Luke Eaton is someone that I really, really respect in terms of his understanding of data and how talent.
I really like his more recent series where it's about creating. I think his more recent series was actually about data usage as it's like a 8 or 9 part series. He's got a newsletter now, which I'll also tag into this.
Yes, me too.
And he's also creating has he created a book? I think
he's created I think he has, but I think the most iconic thing that he's created. So when I was at LOCAD, I loved data. And I put it into these. I know what I want. I can see it in my mind's eye, but I wasn't there at creating it. He created a dashboard with a lot of breakdowns in it, which is something he built. And I've seen it, and he sent out one of his recent ones. And I've just messaged him yesterday, actually. I'm hoping to get a chat with him, because he said, if you want to see how it works, come with me. Send me a message. So hopefully by the time this comes out, I might have an update on that. But ultimately, it's a dashboard of so many breakdown parts that will allow you to explore and understand how your business is going about its talent acquisition. And one of the things that I think a lot of people ask, and I think when you interview for these types of jobs a lot as well, how do you influence stakeholders? Well, you know what? Most of the founders, most of the stakeholders cannot deny data. So if you can say, when they reach you, one thing, and I hope you like, I'm sure you won't mind. My CEO at LOCAD, we were really fast at getting offers out. We were not so great at closing the offer, because they would sit in a very busy person's inbox that needs to be signed electronically. And I was always on the case of, hey, we can do this, and we've got salary bandings and everything like that. And I was thinking about workforce, we can do it like that. And we were getting close to it. So sometimes you do need the data. Sometimes it doesn't win the argument, but you've got it. It backs it up. But go out and explore the market. There's so many people that will give you free advice. They'll have a coffee with you. They'll share information with you. They're generating newsletters and podcasts, and like this is really informative as well. I like this one. There's a lot of good information that people talk about And I don't have all the answers, so it's been great. And I would recommend that as well. Be a sponge, right? Like at the beginning of the career, this was, a changeover. But then you start, finding the topics that really interest you and you see value in and really delve into it. So those would be the kind of, the things that I would recommend.
Well, Dave, I really do appreciate you spending time, and not because obviously one, you just made a nice little plug about podcasts being good, but no, genuinely, there's so much knowledge that you've got, and I've made loads of markers onto this behind the scenes because there's so many pinpoints that I feel like this is one of those episodes where you need to listen to it more than once, if I'm honest, because there's so many bits of information you offer, but it's all good because it doesn't matter if you're first one in a small team or even in a larger team, you'll be able to take certain things away because fundamentals that you're looking at, they don't change. They might just change how much impact you might be able to have at what time, but it's always going to be floating around branding, kind of experience, the technology you're using, retention. So I appreciate you spending time and going for this. So obviously from people listening, if they want to find you, they want to follow up with you, have a deeper conversation, where is best to get hold of you?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn will be the best place. Yeah. LinkedIn. Always happy to have a chat with people on this or share my experiences on there. But yeah, LinkedIn is the easiest place to find me. That's where us recruiters are always active, right? So
always. Even when we're not working, we're on there. Well, I'll put your LinkedIn URL into the description. But again, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks a lot for inviting me, and best of luck.